breakout speaker. She's speaking twice, right, Julie?
2 times.
Twice at conference. So you don't want to miss her sessions. We have with us tonight Julie Skolnick, and Julie, and as I pull up her bio, is the founder of With Understanding Comes Calm. And if you followed our page for a while, we've probably shared some of her stuff and reposted some of her stuff. But she guides parents of gifted and distractible children, mentors 2E adults, trains educators, and advises professionals on how to bring out the best and raise self-confidence in their 2E students and clients. Julie's studies at Colgate University, Boston College, and Cornell Law School allowed her to take a deep dive into sociology and why people do what they do. Her advocacy focuses and orients her towards seeing what someone needs based on who they are and how they show up in the world, which is great for Gifted Ed. Her community involvement mirrors her passion for the gifted and twice exceptional community, serving as secretary to Maryland Superintendent's Gifted and Talented Advisory Council. So she's joining us tonight all the way from the East Coast. She's the advisor for the Masters of Education program for the Bridges Graduate School of Cognitive Diversity and the Maryland liaison for supporting the emotional needs of gifted, otherwise known in the acronym SANG. She's a committee member for NAGC and an advisor to the G Word, a feature documentary that is currently in production. So she also produces the Let's Talk 2E virtual conferences, which some of you may have attended, and hosts the Let's Talk 2E empowerment groups. And she has published Gifted and Distractible, a free weekly newsletter, and she's going to talk about tonight about an upcoming awesome publication that she has. And Julie and her husband actually have 3 twice exceptional children, so she speaks to us from experience, who keeps them on their toes and uproariously laughing. Julie's therapist is a standard poodle named Tigger. I bet Tigger has a lot of energy too. So Julie, I appreciate you joining us this evening. I'm excited for this nice casual Q&A. We don't get a lot of those, so I'm excited for this format tonight, and I appreciate everybody who's joining us. For those of you who are joining us, please let us know where you're from and where you're joining us from in the chat, and I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
Yeah, so I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So we're doing this Q&A, and I'm excited to do this because I've done this fabulous presentation to all you folks in Colorado and those of you joining us from all over the world. And I kind of feel like I'm a little bit from Colorado because I'm really involved in the Colorado Gifted and Talented Association. I always am at your conference and here. So thank you so much for continuing to partner with us and to see the importance in really understanding and supporting 2E learners. So Randy, up to you. Do you want to ask me questions? Do you want me to pose questions and then answer them? What would you like to do in this fun Q&A?
I'm happy to start posing questions and just kind of get started from there. But first, we are talking about your new book, Gifted and Distractible. That's published October 17th, you said?
It is, but here's a sneak peek. It came to my door on Friday. Perfect. Look, my husband's reading it. There's his little bookmark. But this is my 4th child. Yeah. Gifted and Distractible. And it really is a culmination of a love affair with this population and really seeking so much to support and guide parents, support and guide teachers and professionals. What I like to say, Randy, is I circle the wagons of all the grown-ups because the 2E kids don't have the power. And so when I'm talking about 2E kids, really my goal is to bring out the best and raise self-confidence in 2E kids. And the way I do it is by helping parents and teachers understand, learn strategies, and figure out a way to advocate for them. And then 2E adults, I do the same thing because they're 2E kids all grown up.
Mm-hmm. So the book then is essentially to help parents support their children.
Well, actually.
And adults learn about themselves.
Yeah, but really teachers. I would say it's really parents. It's called Gifted and Distractible, Understanding, Supporting, and Advocating for Your Twice Exceptional Child. So your twice exceptional child, in my brain, when I wrote the book, this first book was really for parents. However, it's extraordinarily useful for teachers, and I'll tell you why. The last section of it is, and I think we're going to dig into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of the book, but it's advocacy and collaborative advocacy, and specifically, how do you collaborate between parents and teachers when you are working with a 2E kid? And so, yeah, I'll let you ask my questions, and then we'll see why all the other stakeholders are folded into this book and why it's important for all stakeholders.
And if you're an educator, and just in my experience of being a gifted educator, is that the children who often need the most support and advocacy are our 2E children, and they are often also the most misunderstood.
Totally.
And so getting that advocacy is huge. So let's talk about that. First, let's talk about, like, kind of dig into the nuts and bolts of your book. And let's talk about first, when you talk about the cycle of success in your book, what is that? Can you explain that for our audience today?
Yeah, sure. And it's actually cycle 4 success. And it has 3 stops on that cycle. Okay. So understanding, strategies, and advocacy. I'm looking through the book to try to find you the picture of my cycle for success so that you have a visual, because I'm a visual learner and you might be a visual learner out there. So here's the cycle for success. And you can see at the top is understanding, followed by strategies, followed by advocacy. And the book is divided into those 3 parts. The first part is a deep dive into understanding, what does it actually mean? I started my service with Understanding Comes Calm around 10 years ago. And at that time, my tagline was supporting parents of gifted and distractible kids. I was solely focused on parents at that time. And I wanted to cast my net quite widely. And I actually looked in the pediatric guide for a word that could stand for all the things. Right. So distractible ended up being my catch-all wide net that stands for all the conditions and diagnoses from ADHD to autism, sensory processing differences, auditory process, dyslexia, dysgraphia, all the things. Okay. Social, emotional, anxiety, processing speed, working memory, all of those things are sort of under distractible. I find that most often people actually don't get what gifted means. So the first chapter really unpacks what does gifted mean, and understanding that, and then understanding I chose several of the most often seen in my practice learning differences, and it unpacks those as well, and sort of understanding that. Then we move into the second part, which are strategies. So first we have to have this overall understanding of what does it mean to be gifted and what does it mean to be 2E? And then what is this child in front of me? How do I understand this child in front of me? That's the deep work that I do with parents and clients, because, you all know, once you meet one 2E kid, you've met one 2E kid. So we have to really understand the specific kid in front of us, and then we can craft strategies. And I have sort of a scaffolding of strategies of how I teach them. And we apply that to the kid in front of us. And then we have to advocate. So we have to advocate as parents and teachers. Sometimes when I'm training teachers, I'll say, guys, you might be the advocate for this kid to his, her, their parent, because the parent may not understand. And we need to learn, how do we collaboratively advocate so that as a parent, I don't feel like, oh, the teacher's rolling their eyes as I walk down the corridor, or the teacher isn't thinking, oh man, this parent, oh, they never collaborate with me. They are hiding stuff from me. How do I get them to stop being so defensive? Right? How do we do that? So there's very specific ways. And actually the book at the beginning, it talks about, Randy, how when I started going to parenting conferences, 20 years ago, it was like every time, guys, if you have this experience, put it in the chat. Every time it would get to the last 10 minutes and the speaker would be like, oh, let me give you the strategies. And I was like, smoke is coming out of my ears. What? So I have always promised my clients, my audiences, that I will be at least 60% strategies. And truth be told, this book has 200 pages of strategies and 25 worksheets. So it is very hands-on. So that's the cycle for success. Let's understand, create strategies based on the understanding. Let's advocate. And then the wheel kind of goes around and around, because now we've got to advocate for people to understand. We've got to advocate for people to use out of the box strategies, and so on.
I love that visual too, because I think a lot of people just jump into like, okay, strategies, how do we fix it? What do we do? Oh, I put them in the class. We solved it. But we don't understand that maybe the front of the class is overstimulating. Just as much, or
doesn't allow the kid to pace or stand up. Oh yeah, I love that you gave that example because I use that a lot. I say when I see in a plan, preferential seating, okay, is that on the radiator because the stimulation's really good and it's on the side of the room away from the door? Or is it like in the back because they're standing and pacing? Is it like, what does that mean? And have you thought about which ear the auditory processing is more like, there's a lot that goes into preferential seating. It doesn't mean front row under teacher's nose. Sometimes that's overwhelming.
Absolutely. And so I appreciate that kind of like that, setting that understanding up first. Because for people who've been doing this for decades, it feels like we keep saying the same thing over and over, but there are still so many people out there who don't understand, or people who have a twice exceptional kid find this out when they're 4 or 5 years old and need the support and understanding, but need the understanding first so they can understand their child. And teachers who go into the teaching profession without any training in gifted ed or twice exceptionality. So I think you're right about that.
Yeah,
we keep coming back around to that understanding. We can't just say, oh, well, I get it, everybody else must too. Let's just keep the ball rolling with strategies. And
yeah, a whole other piece that is not, there's like a footnote in the book, but there's a whole other piece because I'm really I've got a bee in my bonnet right now, Randy, about the fact that there's so much bad press about gifted and that it should be advanced learners and that it's racist and elitist and all these terrible, horrible things. And, it's really about the identification process and teacher training. That's really what we need to do.
Yeah.
And so teacher training is huge. And we have to appreciate that teachers, and I talk to parents about this all the time, teachers aren't trained to teach gifted, let alone 2E kids.
Oh, if they get an hour in their teacher preparation programming, it's surprising.
This book is like literally the last chapter is a day in the life of a 2E kid. And it literally goes through all the micro stresses of a 2E kid. And it's just very enlightening and very important for teachers to see that and to read the tons of anecdotes that are from clients and my own.
I think that's the best, learning through stories, right?
Yeah.
And so I do appreciate also the strategies philosophy you have of like providing a good chunk of your time for strategies, because I'm with you. Like, I need something to do. I need to be able to do it. We can talk theory all day long, but unless I can take something back to my classroom or to my student or to my child, I've just been told what I already know sometimes. So
yeah, or you just like left with the question is now what? I'm all about the now what. That's I want to answer the now what. That's my goal.
Absolutely. So you have a paradigm for strategies in your book called PRAISE, all caps acronym PRAISE, representing 6 categories of strategies. So can you walk us through that acronym and share a couple of your favorite strategies today?
Absolutely. So the acronym is PRAISE. It's 6 categories of strategies, as Randy said, and they are personal connection. Everything flows from personal connection. So the first thing, the number one thing you got to do is make sure you have a deep personal connection. Oftentimes it's hard. I have parents with kids ages 2 to ages 17. And then I start seeing adults and I have them from 18 to 70 something. So wherever you are, that personal connection, sometimes it's hard. And there are specific strategies that I teach to help deepen a personal connection with a 2E child. So personal connection, reframe. How do we reframe all the assumptions of laziness, manipulation, not caring, whatever other assumptions or negativities we ascribe, though we need to fix, right? Diagnose and fix, as opposed to really being strength-based, sort of this deficit focus. So how do we reframe? So there are exercises in the books for that. Reframe, anticipate. Now, anticipate is the biggest section of this part of the strategies part of the book. And that is because we can anticipate so much. So parents and teachers out there, you already know, get that 2E kid in your head, what transitions are hard, what stimulation is hard, what coursework is hard, what kind of a personality is hard. You know so much. And probably you're trying the same strategies tomorrow that you tried yesterday, and I promise you they're not going to work. So I really want to build up my clients and say, you know so much. Now let's address the triggers that you've identified. Now you can anticipate triggers, but you can also anticipate your own patterns, your own styles. So I identify a few parenting styles, which might also bleed over into teaching styles, but sometimes we parent from anxiety. Oh, what will happen? What won't happen? What might happen? Right? Sometimes this is all genetic. So our parents of 2E kids also have a lot of words. So you might be talking your kid to death, like lecturing and talking. And if I just keep saying words, they'll do something different, right? That's another style. And then there's the fix-it parent, the parent who just is frontal lobing it all over the place, right? Like, I'm just going to solve this problem. I'm going to make this happen and make it go away, right? So we can anticipate actually our own patterns. So there's a lot of anticipating that can happen. Yeah. Okay, so personal connection, reframe, anticipate, incentives and choices. Not such a huge fan of incentives, gotta say. Oftentimes incentives are used and shame a child for something they organically cannot do. For instance, getting a sticker for standing in line when you are identified with ADHD and that unstructured time is really hard. Giving this incentive and having external motivation versus internal motivation. So there are times when incentives actually do work. I needed an I to spell a word because C in there for choices wasn't going to work. So incentives do work when we do them in a group way, or my favorite part of the type of an incentive is if you are competing against yourself. If you're using a Pomodoro or tomato timer to incentivize yourself by working for X amount of minutes and taking a break, correct, that's an incentive. If you're timing your child, how long it takes them to get up the stairs to do their nighttime routine, and they're only competing with themselves, not siblings, because sibling rivalry for 2E kids is more intense, as everything is. So we're only competing against this. So that's incentives. Choices gives 2E kids control. They love choices. So choices is a big strategy that I teach. So personal connection, reframe, anticipate, incentives and choices. Sense of humor, super important for our beautiful existential thinking, gifted and 2E kids. We got to have sense of humor. My goal in life, guys, because my son's upstairs, is to make my kid laugh hysterically on the way to school every morning. I'm pretty successful at it because I'm a goofball, but that is a great way to start the day. Get your kid to laugh. Yeah. Improv is another great thing to do with your students in a classroom. So last but not least is exercise. And we know exercise is super important, and sort of folding that in during the day. And how can we do that creatively? And how can we make sure? And how do we get, older kids involved with our younger kids? So those are the categories of strategies that I teach.
Excellent. I think I can't wait to read this book, because I'm sitting here going, okay, I would love to know what some of the reframing strategies are, or I'd love to know, sense of humor is pretty self-explanatory. And I appreciated your anticipation, like not just looking at anticipate the student behavior, but anticipate your own kind of reactions to things. Like when you were saying that talk them to death, I am so guilty of okay, mom, I heard you the first time. I'm like, well, if you heard me, you would have done something different. And I know, I do talk my kids to death. And I think that, a lot of parents do, but with 2E kids, especially, they're like, it's just wah, 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 like Charlie Brown's mom, after a certain amount of time. So I do appreciate.
That was actually Charlie Brown's teacher, I think. I hate to say. But yeah, it's just it's human nature. We see the train. We have all these years of life behind us. We've been living our lives, and we see, and maybe we even see ourselves and our kid, and so that makes it even more painful because we see the mistakes they're making that we made. So we're like, we need to get that train off the track. We've got to change that track. But you know what the truth is? Here's the secret. This is a hard one to swallow. When we tell our kids what to do, we're saying to them, we don't think you can figure this out. We have to do this for you. Yeah. When we use some of the strategies in the book, one of them is called the parent pivot, where instead of telling, we ask questions. Instead of making conclusions, we lead the child with questions toward the conclusion on their own. They're imprinting in their head. They're learning. behavior, critical thinking, how to solve their problem. They're in charge. As opposed to that low, we started by saying, I want to bring out the best in Ray's self-confidence. If you're not allowed to solve your own problems or nobody thinks you can, that is the biggest self-confidence killer right there.
And what did you call that strategy?
That's called the parent pivot. And there are very specific ways of asking questions. So I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that and give you an example if you would like me to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm learning things.
So, okay, your kid comes home and they're like, ugh, I hate my teacher. She's such a jerk. You might want to say, oh, she was probably having a bad day. Oh, what did you do? Or whatever. But we're just going to kind of listen and say, wow, well, this is actually another strategy. They're all folded in together, which is called validate and reiterate. We're going to validate. We're going to say, wow, sounds like you had a hard day today. Yeah, she's such a jerk. She didn't let me turn in my homework. It was right in my locker, which is like 5 feet away. Now you might be thinking, I can't believe that teacher. He finally did his homework and she didn't let him turn it in. But we're not going to say any of that. We're going to say, tell me what happened. Well, we were supposed to turn in our homework and, I was talking with my friend. And so, I didn't turn it in right away, but I thought I could just go out in the hallway. Okay, so now we want to say, are you kidding me? She told you exactly what to do and you didn't do it. No, we can't say that because we haven't taught him anything. So now we have to say, oh man, your homework was in the locker right there and you weren't allowed to turn it in, huh? And he said, yeah, I wasn't allowed to turn it. Now we do the parent pivot. We go, wonder what you're going to do tomorrow. What do you think you're going to say? How do you think you're going to handle that? Why do you think she felt that way? What do you think she'll say to you when you say what you just shared with me that you're going to say? So my thing is this, okay? I'm going to get up and show you something. Here's this space in front of you, okay? If you feel like it, Randy, do it with me. Show me the space in front of you. You got all this space in front of you, right? That's a lot of space. Blah, 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 fills the space. Mm-hmm. We want to save that space for our kids to come into it and talk to us about what's going on. We want them to process in their head. Okay, here's another example. You finally get your kid. This is actually a true example. I can't remember if I put it in the book or not at this moment. I think I did. You want your kid to be involved in courses. It was during COVID. You couldn't get them online. They hated it. They didn't want to do it. You got them into one and they did it and they loved it. And you're sitting in the next room going, you're having a party because your kid's engaged in some sort of awesome course. They come in and they say to you and you say, how was it? And they say, it's good. I don't want to do it again. Oh, you're like, you're kidding. I finally got you involved in something. You want to say all these things, but instead you say, oh, so you reiterate. So you decided you don't want to do it again, huh? Nah, I really don't want to. Now this particular kid that I'm modeling this example after has a lot of social anxiety and executive functioning challenges. And so she kind of walked out of the room, came back in and was like, yeah, so we learned something. Mom says, oh, tell me more about what you learned. So you liked that. I could see you liking that because of the way that you creatively think and you sort of tease it out a little bit, just making it relevant. Yeah. Kid walks out again, walks back in. Is like, do you think I could sign up for that course again? Now, that's a true story. Had mom been like, are you kidding? I heard you laughing in there. You loved it. What is your problem? You really, what else are you going to do? You're just going to be on video games all day, right? Like if we do what's so typical and normal, guys.
So guilty.
So all of us are, why do I know this? Because I had 3 guinea pigs to try it on. So, this is the type of the strategies in the book weave in anecdotal evidence to talk about real life situations and how to sort of tweak them so that you get the result that you really, really want. And it's not all that, and by the way, timing is everything, right? You can't now don't have this agenda. Julie said you can't sit down and be like, so here's what we're going to talk about, because that doesn't work either. And by the way, can't talk about stuff on the way to school. Remember, you want your kid laughing. Can't talk about it on the way home from school. They're exhausted. Can't talk about it before bed. You want them to sleep. Uh-oh. When do you talk about it?
Yeah.
So you have this running list in your head. Hopefully you're eating ice cream, maybe sitting outside. and you talk about something that they love, and then you start planting seeds. I was just thinking about, and you start to talk about it that way. If they bite, great. If they don't, let go. Come back to it, because what you're doing is you're establishing new patterns.
Yeah, I definitely make the mistake of like, the only time I have time to talk to you is in the car.
Well, the car is a great place to talk. It's just to school or from school, not the greatest time. So driving to the drugstore, or the grocery store, or to dinner, yes, full stop. You're strapped in. You can't go anywhere. You're not looking at each other. Great time to talk. Just not on the way to school or from school.
Yeah, car rides with my teenage son probably are to like, other places than school or practice seem to be the times where he kind of just like opens up. Yeah. And I think it's also the not having to make eye contact thing. So that's probably,
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, I love that you have such practical strategies and real life examples, because I know that a lot of moms on here, just like me, are probably relating right now. Because I definitely am. So I, again, can't wait for this book to come out. But we talked about understanding, we talked about strategies, but I do want to make sure we talked about your third piece of the cycle for success, and that's the advocacy approach. And you talk about it in terms of collaboration. So explain, because we hear that, but we don't always see it in practice, and we try and it doesn't always work. So how can we best collaborate as educators and as parents to work together for best outcomes for our kiddos?
So that's a whole talk. I have the 10 best approaches for collaboration between parents and teachers, but I set up advocacy. I call it the art of advocacy. So you can tell, like, praise, cycle for success. We didn't even talk about my 3-layer cake of giftedness, but I have all these visuals and ways that analogies so we can remember these things. So the art of advocacy is ART, acknowledge, request, thank. So acknowledge is whoever, teacher to parent, parent to teacher. Oh my gosh, thank you for taking this time. I know how busy you are, and I really appreciate you trying to collaborate with me, because this is a hard nut to crack, right? Acknowledge the situation. Then the request, there's a whole worksheet on how to create a specific versus general goal. So IEPs are really important. 504 plans are really important. They're very formulaic. I think they're awful to read. Mm-hmm. And so I try to put all my practical strategies into also this type of advocacy of crafting specific actionable goals. I always say, if you were to say that goal to a 4-year-old, would they know what the first step was to go toward that goal? If so, you have a specific goal. So that's really, really hard, as opposed to, 30% of the time, whatever any of that stuff means. Okay, so that's the request. It has to be very specific, and action items have to come out of it, measurables, and who's in charge of those measurables. Mm-hmm. And then thank. We always have to take the time to thank. And of course, you want to thank. You are wonderful, grateful people. However, you're also extraordinarily emotional and probably in your amygdala, because you've had really crappy experiences in the past when you've tried to advocate on behalf of your kid. So that's why I'm giving you the formula, so that you can remember. So then there's so many parts to the advocacy part as far as collaboration. I talk about egos, Lego my ego. If you're as old as I am, you remember the ad Lego my ego. Maybe they still do that. But anyway, Lego my ego. That's actually a blog I wrote on my website with Understanding Comes Calm. So we really have to not be about, we know the best. I firmly believe parents are the experts on their child. They may not deliver information in the way that's very actionable or collaborative at times. Or they may come in very emotional or ready for a fight because they're used to, and they have trauma. I also wrote a blog on PTSD and how it completely overlays on parenting 2E kids. So there's a lot teachers that have to know. And then teachers have the same challenges where, why are they teaching? Because they love teaching. They want to teach. They want to make a difference in the world. They want to, one student by one student, do their magic. So when they can't, it's so frustrating and hurtful for them, and it hurts their heart. So then we need to come together with, again, that understanding, giving the benefit of the doubt I talk about a lot, I talk about, I literally say no bad mouthing. I have a parent-teacher triangle, parent-teacher child triangle where I talk about all these things, no bad mouthing to your kid, giving the benefit of the doubt, and understanding and appreciating each other. So that's just like a tip of the iceberg of all the things towards collaboration, but it's really taking actually that cycle for success and overlaying it. You know, you have to understand everybody's perspectives, right? Isn't it ironic that our kids so often, we want them to understand another perspective, like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that or didn't do that or whatever. And then we kind of forget also to take other people's perspectives in mind. So I always say, we come into the world and we look through our very own eyeballs. We don't get, as a 2E kid, our incredible superpowers or why it makes sense that we have this challenge. We just hear what other people say. And we also might have expectations that are inappropriate of other people, just like other people have inappropriate expectations of us. So it's really important for parents and teachers to role model being vulnerable, giving the benefit of the doubt, asking questions, doing a cost benefit analysis of what really needs to be talked about. And by the way, most people love my 3-sentence rule. My 3-sentence rule is, if you have an email that's more than 3 sentences, don't send it. It is a conversation or a meeting. If you receive an email that is more than 3 sentences, I would say respond and say, looks like we need to have a meeting. Don't respond to the content, because all those words either came from angst, anxiety, anger, or it's inappropriate. It's overwhelming. Who has time to read those emails? Mm-hmm. That's not fair either for either parents or teachers.
Yeah, and I think we say things in email that can get misconstrued emotionally, and then we have a misunderstanding, or we've tweaked the meaning of the words that were in there because we're on the defensive. And I think about all the long emails I received as a gifted coordinator and a teacher, and I think, yeah, it probably would have been better to just not even read it and just say, okay, I can tell by the tone already that this is something we need to talk about in person, because I think we all also feel like we can say things in certain ways on the computer that we wouldn't say in person.
Yep. And if the person did say those things, very, very hard, but I go back to benefit of the doubt. Whoever is saying those things has had a really hard time with that child or some other situation. And I talk a lot about role modeling and saying things like, I don't think now is the best time for us to talk. Mm-hmm. Or to say, I am feeling, if you're talking to your child, wow, and you're getting triggered, you might say, wow, I can feel my stomach tightening and my shoulders going up to my ears right now. And I'm not sure I'm going to be my best self. I'm afraid I might say something I'd regret. So I'm going to walk away. I love you. I'm going to walk away, collect myself. I'll come back and we'll resume this conversation. Mm-hmm. Could you imagine if your kid did that back to you? Mom, you know what? I can tell in my body I'm feeling pretty stressed right now. Can you imagine your kid saying that? I don't want to say anything I would regret, so I'll be back. It would be awesome. Think of that. So we want to role model that behavior.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we'd be so much more effective. So thank you for that tip. I'm going to use that, the 3-sentence.
3-sentence
for sure. Baby. That's a great tip. Well, we're sitting at 5:36, and I want to make sure that the individuals in the chat and watching us today know that they can ask questions and they can put their questions. And we did have one question, but it was about the title of the book, and they're very excited for your book to come out. And
you can actually pre-order it now anyway. Actually, this is great that you're saying that, because I'm so glad I remembered to say this. So you can pre-order the book now anywhere, but please go to giftedanddistractible.com, because if you upload your receipt, your electronic receipt there, you'll get an exclusive invite for a Q&A with me that's happening on November 8th. Oh, cool. So you have to order the book by October 16th, because it comes out October 17th. It will arrive at your door. They promised me October 17th. So you can order it now.
Pre-order and then get an invite to an exclusive Q&A on November 8th, you said? Okay.
November 8th. Yeah, you just have to upload your receipt at giftedanddistractable.com.
Oh, that'll be so fun. And then that way it gives us time to read it before we. Awesome. Yep. Awesome. Okay. So just as a reminder, go ahead and put any questions that you have for Julie in the chat. And the questions could be about her book, but they could also be about just like parenting or teaching twice exceptional kids. And we know we have lots of questions about parenting and teaching twice exceptional kids. So
and if you're here, if you're here tonight and you are at my session or one of my or both of my sessions at the conference, please come say hello. You heard me here, because that'll be so fun, because I'm imagining you all in my head right now. So I'm wondering if it matches. Yes.
And you know that we have, like, we'll have viewers on now, but then we post it and we get views all the time from, and I think this would be a great for our parent affiliate groups or for teacher PD. It'd be a great book study.
Yeah, well, funny you should say that, Randy. It's almost like you're a plant. And this wasn't a question we talked about, but I just met with my team today. We're launching a course. The G&D course will come out in February. We'll start advertising around December, I think, maybe November. And if there are any 2E adults out there, we have an awesome group called the Haystack for all the 2E adult needles out there. So that's another great thing that we do. And we open enrollment 4 times a year for that.
That is awesome. There's a lot of great stuff coming out with this book then that people have to look forward to. So if you were to say, like, it's hard to say summing it up in a sentence or a couple sentences, but if you were to say, what is, after people get done reading Gifted and Distractible, what is the big takeaway that you want your readers to have from reading this book?
So it's funny. I was hired to actually read the audiobook. So you can also get an audiobook, and it's me reading it. And I had to stop during the last chapter several times to collect myself because I got very emotional. There's so many overall messages, but the overall message is this to parents: you are the just right parent for your child. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. Sometimes you just cannot see anything beyond your nose. And you're stressed and you're overwhelmed. And what have I done? And what have I not done? But I promise you, parenting and life is not about the plateau where things are super easy and we're just chugging along, that place we want to be, where everything's easy. Yeah, that's the afterlife. Yeah. Life is the struggle. And you're teaching your child how to be in that struggle. So it's not the overall messages. It's not what happens to you, but how you handle it that matters and will be the best thing for you and your child. Awesome. Awesome. And that last chapter you mentioned is the chapter where is it the day in the life of a 2E? Day in the life of a 2E kid. Yeah. Yeah.
I can imagine how that would be emotional.
Yeah.
When I talk to 2E kids about like the challenges they have, and the struggles they have and the things that trigger them throughout the day, it creates a whole nother level of empathy and understanding for the demands of an 8-hour school day for a student who's got sensory processing or ADHD or autism, and the way they're expected to just kind of conform in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, masking. We talk a lot about masking, right? And trying to be what other people expect you to be, assessing what those expectations are, knowing you can't really meet them, coming home and falling apart, the micro stresses, even before you get out of bed, because of all the things, the movie that's playing in your mind of what happened yesterday or what might happen today. Yeah. Absolutely. So we have, it looks like we don't have any questions yet. We do have a individual who's got a very specific question, and we have directed her to your website. Okay. Sure. So that she can reach out and contact you. Yeah, actually, that's probably a good time for me to say that I offer 20-minute free phone consultations to anybody at Julie Skolnick, SKOLNICK.com/20min, MIN, like minutes, but MIN. So julieskolnick.com/20min. And you can schedule yourself for a phone consultation.
julieskolnick.com/20min. Okay. Yep. All right. I'm putting that also in the chat. So people who have very specific questions.
And they're welcome. Yeah, they're welcome to email me, Julie@withunderstandingcomescalm.com. But if you go to my website withunderstandingcomescalm.com, I always say pack snacks because there's a lot there. I've been writing a blog a month since 2014. We have a free newsletter called Gifted and Distractible. So if you go up to publications and click on newsletter, you can subscribe there and choose who you are and however many things you are, parent, teacher, grandparent, all the things. And then you'll get specific information for you. So that's another great way. And there's tons of videos. I have a YouTube channel. I am on everything social media, everywhere, including Pinterest, if you can believe it. But that one I'm not so active on. But yeah, I'm everywhere. And I have also specific Facebook pages. So With Understanding Comes Calm, my name, or Let's Talk to Parents, Let's Talk to Teachers Lounge, or Let's Talk to Adults. And those are my Facebook pages. And then I'm on Instagram and everywhere else.
Oh my goodness gracious. So there's a plethora of ways to reach out to you, but I've also been on your website, and it's like, you could spend all day on your website and still not like scratch the surface. I feel like you have so much information for so many different stakeholders who are living with and working with 2E kiddos. So, and 2E adults. And your Let's Talk 2E conference, I think I attended it last year, and it was pretty fabulous.
Yeah, they're on demand.
I think that's when I
say that again.
You had Seth Perler, I believe.
Oh yeah.
I love him for executive functioning too.
Yeah, he's great. He's a good friend. Yeah.
So we do have a question in the chat, like just a broader question that maybe we can answer that's not very specific or won't like compromise privacy. Andrew Vaughn asks, what are your thoughts on public schools for 2E kids versus other options? So if you're fortunate enough to have school choice, what are your thoughts on public education versus other options, charter or private?
Yeah. So, and you could actually add in Montessori, Reggio Emilia. Okay. So it is case by case. I know you don't want to hear that. I have like an extraordinarily shallow bench of referrals that I get, because to have a true 2E referral is pretty rare. To have a true 2E school is extraordinarily rare. And if somebody says, oh yeah, we do 2E exclusively, that raises a question, because what does that even mean? Right? We started out by saying, once you've met one 2E kid, you've met one 2E kid. So what I'm going to say to you is it's more important to focus on the culture. By and large, first of all, does the administration, but then does the faculty by and large really enjoy out of the box thinkers, pushing back, asking questions? How do they teach? Is it project-based? Is there choice? Is it kinesthetic? Can they move around? Does it matter? Is there any stigma? Are there behavior plans? Oh my goodness gracious. The red, yellow, green light thing, shoot me now. It's all shame. That's just shame.
The clipping up and down.
Oh my gosh. So if your behavior, you're at a green now, but if you get to yellow, oh, now you're at yellow. Oh, the class isn't going to get their class party because you're at red. That type of, so the question, it's more about how do I craft questions that are going to help me understand the culture of this school? Because I can't say, oh, public school is great for 2E kids. I can't say private school is great for 2E kids. I can't say, Montessori or any, sometimes Montessori is awesome. And sometimes it's horrendous. So it's like, when your kids get older and they have multiple teachers, it's teacher by teacher. I had a kid, he's now 20, but when he was in high school, severely dysgraphic, identified as ADHD, self-identified, and an unbelievable math student. He's studying physics now. He was in the math class, totally tanked. He was in freshman year in AP Gov and knocked the lights out, got the highest score in the nation in the AP exam, which was written. He was dysgraphic. Why? Because the teacher got him and he felt safe and he took risks and he worked so hard. 2E kids who are redirected 40 more times on average than a neurotypical kid in a classroom, when they're understood, they get how meaningful that is. So it's more about the teacher and the culture of the school.
That's a great answer. And I think, yeah, it's about the questions you ask, right? To see if that'll be a good fit. We have one more question. I think that's about, I think unless we get one more really, really probing question, we'll just kind of probably end at this one. Tasha asked, do you have any strategies for these kiddos to deal with bullies at school?
Just holding you in my heart for a second. It's not a simple answer. It will start at home by doing that validating and reiterating that I talked about. Not like, well, why do you talk to him, or go past him? Have you talked to the teacher? Have you, like, all those things are really important to get your child to think of on their own to promote agency. But first we need to validate. Wow, that sounds awful. I can imagine your feelings were really hurt. You probably were embarrassed. He said that thing to you, right? That's validating and reiterating. It's, remember, the space in front of you. Let's invite them in by not filling the space. I wonder what you could do differently. Like, if you had a rewind button, what do you think you would have done if you had a do-over? If you had a magic wand, what do you wish would happen? Is there anybody you think you could talk to? Why do you think this is happening? I know that's a scary question, parents, but we got to let it out, because they have a reason in their head, and it's probably because I'm a total loser. Yeah. And they have to be able to say that to you so that you can say, you're not a total loser, because they're not going to hear that. But whoa, it must be really hard to carry that around in your head all day. There are things about you that I am so astounded at, and it is so frustrating, I'm sure, that other people don't see that. I bet that's frustrating for you. So it's a way that we talk to them at home. Now, depending on the age of the child, there may be some backdoor stuff you need to do. You need to get in with talking to the administration, the teacher. If it's happening on the playground, we need eyes on the playground. If it's happening in the cafeteria, we need somebody to swoop in and have a way that this is handled. And by the way, it's not just separating the kids, because sometimes that doesn't provide closure. My favorite thing is if kids can come together and talk in a way with rules, preferably talking with an SLP, a speech language pathologist, or a counselor, so that they speak in a way that helps them get to the bottom of it. Because otherwise we're just avoiding people, which might at the end of the day be the best strategy, but I don't know yet. So let's think about some strategies and ways to teach how to deal with what's going on. And you are going to have to advocate in the back door. We can't leave that up to the kid to go to the teacher, but we do need to help them with questions, that parent pivot, to work through what they might think they could do. And if they melt and are like, nothing, I can do nothing, make this better, I'm never going back to school, that's the time to hold your child, to try to co-regulate, which is to hold them against your body and slow your breathing down so that their breathing slows down, and to be there with them. Sometimes we cannot say something to make something go away. Yeah. It's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that. And I am really holding you in my heart. You're not the only one with a 2E kid who's being bullied. Oh, no. And I think that's also something in education, we spend so much time, the gifted kid does well in class. Well, we know that's not always true if you know enough about giftedness, right? And the twice exceptional kid is just about like getting them to do the work, getting them to turn the work in, right? And we tend to forget that sometimes maybe those behaviors or that reticence to do the work or whatever it is way more emotional than it is academic in a lot of cases. I feel like when I've made really good, strong connections with students, performance has increased. When I've created a relationship and understanding, performance has increased.
But if I'm dismissive or I'm not meeting their like environmental or social emotional needs, the academic performance isn't going to happen. And I think when we think about, helping students who are twice exceptional, I think a lot of times it's like, well, they're just not turning their work in, or they're not paying attention in class. But I think so much there's that deep underlying emotional stuff that's happening under the current, especially because of the giftedness and the understanding that these challenges exist, and feeling like they should be able to overcome them, but they can't, and that frustration that exists,
Yeah. So one last strategy that I teach in the book is called win time. What I need, win, like win, lose, but win. Yeah. What I need. And so a really good question, because that child is not turning in the work. That child is not focusing. There might be a lagging skill or a learning difference there. So like, what I'm noticing this pattern. What can make it better? What do you need? And at home, it's a very sort of prescriptive way of what do you need? Not during the rage bell curve. So we have a rage bell curve. No teaching or learning happens at the apex during the meltdown. Mm-hmm. So what do you need is anticipatorily or retrospectively. And you actually plan it out. What do you need in those moments? I noticed this pattern. What do you need during those moments? And you make it happen. And we put the little things like the fidgets and the bottles of water and the granola bars and the headphones in a box, and it's the win time box. It's in the win time corner, and that's where we go. So we have fewer words because we pull out our win time list when we see them going up that rage bell curve. We hand them the list, and they go to their win time corner and do their thing.
It's a great strategy to have at home and at school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have a picture in my one of my talks from Prince George's County here in their chill corner.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Julie, I think we are all collectively very excited for your book to come out. But we're also very excited to see you in a couple of weeks in Loveland for our conference. And I know I will make sure to stop by and say hello. I'll be spending a lot of time at the CAGT table, but I'll be trying to make sure to come to several of the sessions that I know are on the schedule, yours included. And then we'll just encourage everybody who's joined us tonight, if you are in attendance at conference, please come say hi to Julie. Remember, if you want to pre-order her book, do that before October 16th, so you can go on to giftedindistractable.com and sign up for her live Q&A on November 8th. And keep a lookout for that course too, around the Gifted Indistractable book coming in February. So you've got a lot on your docket. And I think we also mentioned different ways to get a hold of Julie for the 20-minute phone calls, email, all the separate Facebook pages she has. You are just available everywhere. And again, if you just need basic information about, like, want to know more about something, her website is a goldmine of resources. So
thank you, Randy. Thank you.
Thank
you, everybody, for being here and listening and taking this time. I know it's hard at night. School's just probably started a couple weeks ago, so it's a busy time. So you're doing so much for your students and your children. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming tonight, Julie. I'm going to let everybody else say goodbye to everybody on Facebook, and we will see you in a couple weeks. I wish I knew the guest. I can't think of it on top of my head, but if I think about it, I'll put it in the bottom of the chat. But in a couple weeks, we'll have another guest on. But Julie, thank you again. Good night, everybody.